Energy. Energy is one of the most consumed, most vital, and most sought-after resources in the world. It is the driving force behind the advancement and the continuous operations happening in a society. It is what powers societies and makes them function properly. It is one of the key ingredients to a progressive and thriving society. Energy is used to light our cities. In the Philippines, the need for energy is no different than the need of any other country in the world. Almost all Filipinos from all walks of life consume and need energy to address the needs and contribute to society. From distant small-scale communities to well-developed urban cities. Energy plays a vital role in keeping a society stable and its inhabitants go about their daily lives without interruptions. This is the heart of what drives the Philippine society and its further developments. But what if, suddenly, energy is no longer available or accessible in the Philippines?
According to CNN Philippines, the country last suffered from an energy crisis about 15 years ago, and it may happen again if things don't change. Sufficient power supply is important to move forward, but it is something the administration has so far struggled to achieve. Mindanao has been suffering from lack of electricity. Other provinces like Occidental Mindoro and Palawan are suffering from long hours of blackout. The Luzon grid is no exception. Power supply is unstable whenever some power plants stop working. It may have taken some time, but the Department of Energy said that new power facilities will be up and running beginning this year.
Natin yung outlook for the country, no, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. Marami tayong mga committed projects, and some of these are starting to be constructed.
In Luzon, a total of 2,300 megawatts will be added to the grid from June this year until September of 2019. The Visayas grid will also be augmented by about 442 megawatts, while Mindanao, which has endured power shortages for how many years now, will get an additional 2,000 megawatts. Based on the Energy Department's 5-year outlook, the additional capacity in Luzon and Mindanao will mean there will be no blackouts until 2020. Supply will remain stable in the Visayas until 2018. As data shows, there will be more demand by that year. With the fast-paced growth of the economy, both government and the private sector must work fast to keep up with the growing demand for power. For a growing country, faster than most of its neighbors, there's no room to play catch-up in the quest for stable power. But if the government wants more power plants, economists say it should make the process easier for investors. It takes over 100 permits to build a single power plant. Power sector participants say that the government should focus on long-term solutions to ensure enough electricity. Otherwise, large parts of the country would continue to suffer in darkness.
Before we understand the need of energy, the implications it brings to our society, and the many aspects it branches out to in our country, we first have to know, what is energy? According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, energy is a noun that means the strength and vitality required for sustained physical or mental activity, or second, power derived from the utilization of physical or chemical resources, especially to provide light and heat or to work machines. Or in physics, the property of matter and radiation that is manifest as a capacity to perform work, such as causing motion or the interaction of molecules. What is a crisis? According to energy101.org, an energy crisis is a society-wide economic problem caused by a constricted supply of energy, leading to diminished availability and increased price to consumers. Unfortunately, according to Time magazine, there is an energy crisis in the Philippines and is most likely to plague the whole country in the years to come. While there may be a shortage in energy in the country, an energy crisis is bound to happen and may have already happened in some parts of the country. But why is there an energy crisis in the Philippines in the first place? The Philippines, a 7,107 island archipelago, has around 30 million more people than Thailand, but doesn't even produce half the electricity. That shouldn't be the case. In terms of geothermal power capacity, the Philippines is second only to the US, but transmission and distribution failures, the lack of domestic energy production, and a challenging geography have meant a perennial power problem. The dependence on imported fuel hasn't helped either. The government does not, in general, subsidize fuel, which means that electricity tariffs are set by the market and are thus among the highest in the region. Throw aging power plants and rogue debt-ridden cooperatives into the mix, and the likelihood of blackouts becomes virtually 100%. Why do we need to privatize National Power Corporation or the NAPOCOR? The privatization of the National Power Corporation is an important component of the electricity industry reforms program, as it accounts for about 90% of the electricity generated in the country today, in which 56% comes from its generating power plants and the balance from the so-called independent power producers or IPPs, with which it has power purchase agreements or the PPAs. It is the privatization of NPC, therefore, which will allow real competition to develop, starting from the generation side. In the process, government will also be spared the need to fund hugely capital-intensive power generating plants. It is estimated that of the total investments required by the energy sector within the next 10 years, about half or roughly 380 billion pesos will go to the power sector. As it is, NPC is already highly leveraged and burdened with short-term loans. Investments in the power sector are definitely much too heavy for the government to bear, given other priority programs such as health, education, and agriculture. Why should we privatize NPC in a restructured industry? There is logic in having both restructuring the industry and privatizing NPC. Privatizing NPC alone will only be a transfer of government to a private monopoly and will not result to competition. Thus, they cannot take full advantage of efficiency and will not give consumers a choice. Restructuring alone, on the other hand, does not raise private capital and cash. NPC would still be dependent on the government. There will still be subsidies, distortions, and political interference. We still have to deal with the government bureaucracy. Government entity will be selling to another government entity. How will the restructuring of the power sector and the privatization of NPC benefit consumer, industry participants, and the government? proposed industry restructuring and NPC privatization will be beneficial to consumer and all the stakeholders in the sector. For consumers, restructuring will provide them with the freedom to choose the most efficient and most competitively priced power firm. In fact, the prices of electricity in countries which have undergone restructuring had gone down by as much as 40%. Restructuring will allow for the separation of the distribution and supply business of the cooperatives. The distribution business will still be regulated while the supply will be deregulated and thus will be competitive. With the introduction of open access in the distribution sector, end consumer will have a choice as to where to source their electricity. For the government, it would mean a leaner budget and more streamlined operations. The money that would be spent for the electricity industry without restructuring and privatization can be utilized instead for other vital government services like health, education, and agriculture. For the industry players, there will be diversification of ownership, greater opportunity for technological innovation, and maximum public participation in the sector, thereby enhancing security and reliability of electricity supply. Electrical companies manned and controlled by privatized sectors in the Philippines are responsible in collecting, distributing, and handling the monopoly of electricity and power to each Filipino household. Thus, distribution of energy to each household results into a structure or specific order called the power industry structure. This organized structure is mainly composed of three major sectors. First is the generation, monopoly of NPC until Executive Order 215 became open to private sectors. Private sectors sell it to NPC. Second is transmission. NPC transmits electricity of high voltage wires, and also NPC also constructs transmission grid highways interconnecting main islands in the Philippines. Third is distribution. It is sold to households and done by the investor-owned electric utilities such as Meralco and other government-owned utilities.
Here's a question for you. How many people does it take to turn on a light bulb? The answer seems simple. Just walk into a dark room, flip a switch, and instantly you can see, right? Well, the truth is there's a lot more to generating and delivering electrical power than you've probably imagined. This Energy 101 video explains the system used to generate electricity, and it also explains what it really takes to turn on a light bulb. In order to understand energy, we first need to start at the source, literally. Mother Nature provides the natural resource we use to generate power. From natural gas to coal, ocean tides to mountain winds, the energy we need to create electricity must first be mined, harnessed, or collected from the earth. Some of these resources are finite, including fossil fuels like coal and oil, but others are unlimited, like solar or wind power. But a lump of coal or a strong breeze alone won't create the power that turns on your light. For every energy source, a chemical or mechanical process is required to turn it into usable electricity. Every day, researchers work to find innovative ways to use our limited resources, process raw materials, harness renewables more efficiently, and find entirely new energy sources. Today, the majority of America's electricity comes from thermal power plants. Fuels like coal, natural gas, biomass, and uranium are used to heat water until it produces steam, which powers a turbine and generates electricity. That steam turns propeller-like blades around a rotor inside the turbine. This turning rotor connects to a main shaft which spins magnets with a coil inside a generator. It's the generator inside a turbine that converts mechanical energy into electric energy and creates electricity. Steam is an efficient method of producing electricity because the water can be recycled and reused as it changes back and forth between liquid and gaseous states. Transporting electricity from the power plant to your home is an entirely different process. Current technology cannot cost-effectively store large amounts of electricity, so significant challenges exist when it comes to transferring that electricity across long distances. Just enough electricity has to be generated to meet demand at all times and be transmitted through power lines to reach your light switch. Too much or too little power can crash the transmission system and cause a blackout. That's why a complex mix of logistics, management, and infrastructure is needed to transmit electricity from power generators to consumers. Enter the electricity grid, also known as simply the grid. These independent regional networks of power plants and transmission lines carry electric energy at high voltage within their area to local utilities. There are very limited links between the four grids, which means electricity generated from a wind turbine in West Texas cannot reach an apartment building in New York City. For electricity to move through one of the four grids, its voltage must first be increased by a device called a transformer. Then the electricity can travel long distances across high voltage transmission lines. These high voltage lines are generally strung between giant metal towers. They stretch for miles from power plants to local substations in each neighborhood. You've probably seen substations along the side of the road and wonder what they do. Well, their job is stepping down electric voltages from levels as high as 765,000 volts closer to the 110 volts you use in your home. The electricity from the power line on your street passes through another transformer, which steps down the voltage once more, and then it travels along the line into your house. From there, the electricity enters your breaker box, and it is then distributed to light sockets and outlets. All you have to do is flip a switch. So, as you can see, from the raw materials to the power lines on your street, there's so much more to the electricity ecosystem than meets the eye.
What the country experiencing is a crisis. So, every Filipino household must be responsible in the usage of their electricity. Our sources are not unlimited. Learn to conserve and use our energy efficiently. With this being said, it is essential that each and every one of us must do something to change things for the better and act towards the betterment of the Filipino society. It is not enough to read and depend on the sayings of some government officials, news reports, and articles. We must also do our part in contributing in this issue and hopefully find a solution to the inevitable energy crisis in the Philippines. Let us be responsible citizens of this nation and learn the new issues of our society before we lose our lifeline.